Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers. This is the new Asics Novablast 5, the update to this, the Novablast 4, which launched roughly a year ago. Now, there are some changes in the upper, midsole and outsole departments, and we'll get into what those are first before getting to some initial multi-tester thoughts from myself, Nick, Kieran and Tom on whether the new Novablast 5 makes a good or not so good impression. So, let's get into it. So here's your rundown of those key Asics Novablast 5 stats. Let's start with price, and the good news is that it sticks to the same £135 and $140 launch price as the Novablast 4. Weight-wise, a UK men's size 8 weighed 256 grams compared to 258 grams on the Novablast 4. So that's actually just slightly lighter than the last Novablast in the same size. It remains a shoe with an 8mm drop and the same stack heights as the 4 at both the heel and the toe. Asics has moved to an engineered jacquard mesh upper to improve things on the weight and breathability fronts. Below that lies the new FF Blast Max cushioning, which first debuted on the Asics Glideride Max and promises bounce and responsiveness from a softer foam while still delivering that versatility tied to the Novablast line. At the outsole, Asics is using a new AHA low one that contributes to that promised softer feel and improved grip over the outsole on the Novablast 4.
The fit for me in the Novablast 5, I'm size 8 in the UK. It's pretty similar in size to the previous version of the Novablast. There's plenty of space before my big toe. And it's a fairly roomy shoe in the forefoot as well. I don't think it's the widest shoe around, but it's definitely, I've got fairly average size feet and it felt absolutely fine on the first run that I did in it. The upper does feel a little bit more restrictive than the Novablast 4. Not massively different, but it's definitely a slightly different design to this upper. But I found it to be very comfortable on that first run, and I'd definitely stay to my size in this shoe.
Comes to fit of the Asics Novablast 5. I've got my usual UK 9 here, which is a US 10. It fits me very well, I would say. It's got a very similar fit to the previous models of the shoe and most Asics shoes. Like sometimes the more racy options will be a little bit tighter and more dialed in with the Asics range, something like the Metaspeed Sky Paris. But the Novablast 5 fits for me like the Novablast 4. Good amount of room in the toe box, nice hold around the heel and midfoot. There's plenty of padding there, but it's not overbearing or annoying on the run, I found. So yeah, I would stick to your normal size with the Novablast 5.
So in terms of fit, it's all looking pretty good for me so far in the Novablast 5. I've got it in a UK size 8. That's the same size I've had the previous Novablast shoes in. That is my go-to running shoe size. And I would say so far it's looking like it is a true to size fitting shoe, a lot like the Novablast 4 was as well. The space up front of the toes and the toe box in general feels just the right side of roomy, not overly spacious, and meaning it's going to have scope to be a shoe you can run longer in. The midfoot hold feels very similar. The lacing is very similar as well too. The level of padding in the heel, collar as well feels similar. I would say the only thing I've really noticed here is that obviously there is a change in the upper material. It does feel like there is more upper and more kind of material there, between you and your foot. I amazingly noticed that in around the laces and the tongue, where I've had to kind of maybe cinch those laces a little bit tighter to get that good lockdown. But ultimately, I think it's going to fit a little bit more snug than the Novablast 4. But from a sizing point of view overall, I think going true to size, it's looking like me that's going to be absolutely fine for most people. That definitely seems to be my experience so far in the Novablast 5.
Quick word on fit then. For that first run, I've run in my regular Asics size, which is UK 8.5. What I would say about these, loads of room in the toe box. There's good clearance towards the end. If anything, maybe they feel a bit long, but that can be a thing with the Asics shoes. I get that a little bit with the Superblast as well. But everything holds well across the top of the foot with good lace lockdown. I like the way the tongues wrap the top of the foot. Bit of cushioning there to take off the lace pinch. Those big plush padded heel collars held well for me. And overall, I think I like a roomy fit, and I would definitely say go true to size if that's you. If you want a little bit snugger or a bit shorter on the end, maybe you might think about going half a size down, but I think these are bang on true to size, so that's what I'd recommend.
So this is a pretty exciting shoe. The Novablast range has developed over the last few iterations quite a bit, and if you go back to earlier versions of the Novablast, very different than more recent versions of the Novablast. Novablast 5 has this new FF Blast Max foam in it. Now, this is the first time I've used this foam because we haven't used the Glideride Max. None of us have tested that shoe out, which also uses the same foam. It is similar to what you get in the Novablast 4, but it's a little bit softer and a little bit bouncier. The first run that I did in this, which I've just come back from, was a 12k run, and the bulk of that run was a hill session. So pretty fast, pretty tough. I was a bit of a wreck by the end of it, and this shoe was great. It's a little bit lighter than the Novablast 4, and the Novablast 4 is a shoe that I've always said is a really great versatile daily shoe without a plate in it, that just does a really good job for if you're looking for one shoe, or if you're looking for a training partner for your faster race shoes, things like that. The Novablast 5 from that first run, very similar. I'd say it's delivering the same things. I like it more than the Novablast 4 off the back of that first run, just because I like this foam a bit more. It's a little bit softer than what you get in the Novablast 4, but it is a bit bouncier as well. So you're not losing any of the benefits of the foam because of that softness. You're getting a little bit of extra energy return from it, and as a result, I just enjoyed running in it a little bit more. I really like the Novablast 4, so it's not like it's an amazing improvement on that shoe, because I think it's quite similar. But it's definitely, there's a little bit more to this shoe. It does feel a little bit lighter on the feet. It does feel a little bit bouncier. And for that hill session, it felt absolutely great. I was planning on going all out on that hill session. So previously, before I got this shoe today, I was going to use one of my faster race shoes or something to give me a bit of a bump. But I decided to take this one out because we just got it. And it delivered really well. The heel section of the shoe, which I wasn't running on because I was running as fast as I could up hills, is definitely softer. You can definitely feel that squish in the midsole. But the front section of the shoe really does give you a nice toe off, and it really is conducive to picking up the pace, and very much enjoyed using it for that hill session. So yeah, off the back of that first run, I think it definitely feels to me like a little improvement on the Novablast 4, not massively, but for me, because I like softer shoes, I think it does feel a little bit nicer for me. As soon as I put them on and I got about 200-300 meters down the road, I did notice that they did feel a little bit different than the Novablast 4. Other than that, it wasn't very wet out tonight, so I didn't really give the outsole a good going over, but it does seem pretty sturdy. It's fairly thick rubber on the outsole of the shoe, and it does have this nice sort of groove design on most sections of the rubber. So didn't really get a chance to test that out, the grip on it, but I didn't have any problems at all on the road that I was running on tonight, especially when I was hitting those hills quite hard. So yeah, all in all, very impressed with it on the first run. Think so far I like it more than the Novablast 4.
So I just got back from my first run in the Novablast 5, and I had an hour of running to do today. I started off by kind of hovering below kind of 8-minute mile pace, and then the second half I kind of eased up, went a little bit more relaxed. Ultimately use the Novablast in the way that I would typically use the Novablast or previous Novablast shoes, and the kind of pace I expect it to work well at. Now, the first thing I would say I noticed, and I think even before getting out and running in this shoe, is that FF Blast Max, that's the big headline story here. It's just noticeably softer. Even just kind of pressing into it, you can see it's much softer than the cushioning in the Novablast 4. And when you get into it, it's slightly softer feeling when you kind of, you sink maybe a little bit more into it. It's slightly more plush, not overly plush, but you definitely do feel like it's a little bit softer underfoot compared to the Novablast 4. Now, the other element to it and that cushioning is that it just feels noticeably more bouncy than the Novablast 4 as well too. Now, the stack heights are technically the same, but I have felt in that first run, particularly at the hill, that, for me, it feels like there's more foam between me and the ground, and it just felt bouncy and livelier than the Novablast 4. It's definitely moderately bouncy, I would say, compared to the Novablast 5. It still felt very good at those kind of moderate and up-tempo paces, felt very smooth and controlled to run at those paces as well too. I think the difference for me between this and the Novablast 4 really came in the second half of that run, and when I was running more relaxed and running kind of easier in this shoe. Now, I think with the Novablast 4, absolutely you could run easier in it. I didn't feel it felt as comfortable to run easy in it compared to running moderate and up-tempo paces. I think there's a better balance of that in the Novablast 5. That's kind of what I'm seeing in that first run. When I eased off in this shoe, it definitely felt more comfortable to do that. I didn't think you were losing anything from that ride, but ultimately it just felt that foam works better, easier paces. And I think that's going to be a key here for me, is whether it retains that kind of feel. I think with the Novablast 3, there was that really bouncy, lively feeling, and then it kind of lost that a little bit, and maybe I didn't absolutely love that shoe longer term. I think the Novablast 4, I appreciated what it offered at those kind of moderate and up-tempo paces, but maybe didn't work as as best at those easier paces. I feel like the balance so far, I'm feeling like it's a little bit better here on the Novablast 5. In terms of other things, the outsole, not really much to report here. It looks like there's a similar amount of rubber here. I would expect it's probably going to give you a similar amount of mileage here and grip and traction as the Novablast 4, so nothing massive to report there. I'd like to see how it handles in kind of radiant conditions, because I think, ultimately that's kind of where we maybe see a slight difference in the Novablast ranges, and when we get that kind of TR version, which I inevitably we probably will. But ultimately, yeah, not much to report there, but I would say first and foremost that this is a shoe that feels very much Novablast. It feels bouncier, it feels slightly softer feeling as well too. But I think for me, the key difference here for me, what I'm seeing is that it feels much more comfortable at those easier paces. And that's really what I want to see longer term testing, whether it really retains that and offers that better balance between those easy, moderate and up tempo speeds.
So I'm just heading out to do my first run in the Asics Novablast 5. Got a nice relaxed hour on the plan today. I've put in a lot of miles over the last 5 days with several pretty hard runs in there, so my legs are pretty shattered, so hoping for the shoe to be nice and supportive and comfortable today, and then I'll look at its versatility a bit more another day when I've got a bit more in my legs to try and run a bit faster. But was a big fan of the Asics Novablast 4. That was my favourite version of the shoe so far. Just found it had a really nice smooth ride and a pretty versatile one, fairly lightweight but very cushioned design. Got this new foam in the midsole. Interested to see how the heel bevel now feels, because I think they've reduced the caboose on the shoe a little bit. I'd say it looks a bit shorter, so I'm wondering if that will help the transition, as I am a heel striker, as I move from heel to toe. But yeah, in general, just looking forward to a nice relaxing run and seeing how the shoe feels. Back now, and that was a very enjoyable first run in the Novablast 5. The shoe just has a really nice, easy way about it. It's very easy to just tick over. It's got a really nice transition, actually. It moves you from the heel to toe and quite speedily, even at a nice slow pace. You do feel like a very smooth ride, and it feels like it could pick up the pace quite easily. And a couple of occasions where I did do little mini strides, that kind of thing, it did feel quite nice. But all in all, it just felt really comfortable, really cushioned. For a shoe that isn't positioned as like kind of a max stack, very soft shoe, like lots of shoes are positioned. It is that. It does do that role really well, I think. It is very comfortable, but it is quite lightweight and has a bit of that daily trainer feel about it as well. I did get back and then do a little quick run wearing the Novablast 4 on the other foot just to see how differences were, and they're quite similar overall. I do think for me the Novablast 5 feels a tad softer almost to me. It feels a bit quieter, less slappy on the foot, and I do think the transition from the heel is easier with the slightly reduced bevel you have at the back there. It felt like I was moving onto my forefoot a little bit more easily, a bit better than with the Novablast 4, which is a shoe I really liked as well. So lots of very similar properties, I think, between them in terms of them being very cushioned shoes that are quite lightweight and pretty versatile. Actually, the Novablast 5 is very slightly heavier for me than the Novablast 4 in my size, which is odd because I think all the reviews I've seen have said it's a lighter shoe, but it's much for muchness in terms of weight, and the feel I think is slightly improved. And yeah, really enjoyable first run today. Be interested to see how it feels kind of at any kind of faster paces, but as a daily trainer, I think it's ticking the box again. Really nice first run in the Novablast 5.
Actually out on my first run now in the Asics Novablast 5. The plan here is to do 4 miles, a progression run, so we'll move up through the paces to test the credentials across a range of paces. Now, early runners want to see the variety there in that first run. The other thing I wanted to say, I haven't really looked at any of the specs or the information or any of the other reviews or all the chat online yet about the Novablast 5, so I'm coming to these absolutely fresh and clean. I've got a clean head on, put them on. I think you're getting quite a lot of that kind of classic Asics Novablast feel. The shoe feels slightly longer than some shoes. There is a bit of a kind of boat-like fit to them, not unlike the Superblast 2, where you do notice there's quite a lot of shoe on the foot. Super plush heel collars, nice wrapping tongue, fit feels good, lots of room in the toe box, lots of wiggle room, lots of flex in the uppers. And then when you get moving in them, they're comfortable from the off. The one thing that you really notice then is you get a ride which I think underfoot is super cushioned. There is a bit of bounce to it, and although I would like to do these kind of side by side with the Superblast 2, I'm getting a bit of Superblast vibes out of these shoes for now. In fact, for me in these early 2 miles, what I'm thinking at those slower paces is that these have got excellent cruising potential. There's no doubting the comfort. I'm not feeling much of the road coming up at all. Nice wide platform to run off, big broad base of that foam. Bottom of my foot feels sort of well held and cocooned and just really nicely looked after. Now, I'm always wary of judging a shoe based on early miles, but the instant reactions are also quite interesting. And what I'm feeling at the moment is that these shoes do want to go a bit faster, they want to give a bit more, and at some point I'm looking forward to knocking them up a gear or two to see how that plays out in a sec. So I've just knocked out the last 2 miles of that progression run. I think I did like around about a 7:0 something mile, followed by like a 6:40 something to test the pace. Now I think what I've discovered when I've pushed up those paces is that this shoe, for me so far in these tests, feels better at the slower to middling paces, at the top end of the pace there. When I went to those kind of 6-minute miles, getting towards sort of tireder legs, I just felt they were a bit mushy. There's a bit sludgy and a bit soft for doing those really kind of fastest paces. So I find there's kind of enough bounce and energy and spring and cushioning at the slower paces and when I get into cruising pace. But when I really wanted to push those gears, they just didn't quite have what I wanted. There's a, I always talk about immediacy, but there's a bit of a lack of immediacy in them, and I wasn't getting all that energy that you get from the full bounce. And maybe that's where they'll separate against the Superblast 2. But what's going to be really interesting, I think, is whether or not this shoe can do the same job kind of up the range to those kind of just beneath the fastest paces as the Superblast 2. As a cruising shoe, is it just a cheaper option? You get a similar sort of feel in terms of kind of size of the shoe on the foot, I think. It feels bigger. Doesn't feel quite as big, I don't think, as the Superblast 2, but again, we'll do that comparison. But yeah, underfoot, I've enjoyed the ride. It feels comfortable, lots of cushioning. To me, it feels like we've lost a little bit of the stiffness that maybe came back in the Novablast 4, which I quite like, which made it a little bit more snappy, maybe a little bit more able at the really sort of top end fast paces. But we will investigate more by doing many, many more miles in this shoe. And for now, I'm just going to make my way home.
So my early verdict on the Novablast 5, big fan of it. I think it's an interesting development of the shoe. I like this new FF Blast Max midsole foam. I think there's a little bit more to it than the Novablast 4, and I do think that the foam in the Novablast 4 was very good. So it's nice to have an improvement that isn't having an impact on the range, because previous versions of the Novablast have been a bit up and down for me. I really liked the first one, didn't really like the second one, wasn't a big fan of the third one, really like the fourth one. I think this is probably, based on that first run, probably going to be my favourite of the Novablast range so far. So really impressed with it. Looking forward to using it for a few more daily runs, and might even take it out for a long run over the next couple of weeks as part of my Valencia marathon training. But very, very positive view of this shoe based off of that first run. I think it's a very solid and nice, versatile shoe to train in.
Early verdict is Novablast 5 looks like another winner. I think the changes here have slightly improved the shoe. I don't feel a hugely different sensation with this new foam compared to the previous model, but I do like it a little bit more in terms of I do think it's a little bit softer, and it just moves very nicely on the foot. Like the previous model, I found the improvement for me with the Novablast 4 was that it just ticked over really nicely, and it just felt a lot smoother for me than the previous version, Novablast 3, and that's even more the case for the Novablast 5. It's a shoe that I just found very easy to run in today, and that's what you want on an easy run shoe in particular. It just felt like I was ticking over, could forget the shoe, but I think there is a bit more potential there and bounce if you are going to start upping the pace that I'll look into when we get towards our full review. But yeah, certainly I think the change for me that I've noticed the most is probably the slight reduction at the back there, which I think makes it a bit smoother for me as a heel striker. But all round, just a really good, very cushioned shoe that's still lightweight, and what I really like, in this kind of mid-range of daily trainers, the competition there is things like the Nike Pegasus, the Puma Velocity Nitro 3 is a little bit cheaper. There's the Hoka Clifton. I think the Novablast really stands up very well against that competition. It's just a good value shoe that can do a bit of everything. And yeah, one I look forward to running in again and testing a bit more for sure over longer distances, faster paces, that kind of thing, which we'll cover in our full review.
So some very early thoughts on the Novablast 5, and I'd say first and foremost it does still feel like a Novablast shoe at its core, and I think if you're worried about the changes, particularly with the changes in the midsole, then I don't think from what I'm seeing you need to be concerned. It still feels like to me it's going to be a kind of versatile daily trainer shoe in the same way that previous Novablast shoes have been. I think the key things that are here is that it's definitely bouncier than the Novablast 4, and if you felt that the Novablast 4 lacked that little bit more kind of enjoyment, it's definitely a bouncier shoe, and it's more abundantly bouncier than the Novablast 4. I think the other thing is, for me, is that it does look like it's going to be more comfortable at those easier paces. Maybe it's marrying kind of the Nimbus feel and the Superblast feel in one shoe in a better way ultimately. Now, Only time will tell whether that bouncier feel is retained, because, you know, I've been burnt here before with the Novablast 3, where it started off being a very bouncy, lively shoe, and it lost a little bit of that and felt a little bit flat for me in longer term testing. Now, whether that pans out in the Novablast 5 and whether the FF Blast Max kind of responds well, you know, that's to be seen. But ultimately what I'm seeing is it feels like it's a good installment, a good update on the Novablast 5. At essence, doesn't lose that Novablast kind of feeling. And I think actually, in terms of being a versatile daily trainer, I can work at easy moderate up-tempo paces. I think the balance feels a little bit better for me so far on that first run. So yeah, definitely a positive first run for me. Definitely cautious to see how some of those elements I talked about kind of pan out over longer term testing.
So I'm not really keen on giving verdicts after so few miles. Just done kind of 4 and a bit miles in them across a range of paces. But here's my first impressions. I think there's a lot of classic Novablast going on here. When you look at them out of the box, they look like the 4. They've got that DNA, that generational thing that's going through them when you first look at them. I think, you know, all the uppers and all of that feel, the heel collars, the tongues, all of those things are reminiscent of the 4. Super comfortable, super plush, super controlled, nice and roomy. I feel them quite kind of airy at the moment on that first run, but it is fairly chilly here. Then when you get into the ride, I think what you're getting is that combination of sort of cushion reliability that's really good for easy mile comfort and just for cruising a little bit faster. And that's what I've had there in those first 2 miles where I was going slower paces, was doing like 9-minute miles, then an 8-minute mile. That's where they felt best in the sweet spot. When I pushed up the pace, they lacked a bit of top pace potential, which I thought we got a bit more of with the Novablast 4. So I'm going to be keen to do those side to side. But overall, this feels like a competent, easy end daily training that's going to be able to take care of some of your cruising miles. It's the kind of shoe I feel like if I'm going to go and run long and slow on a Sunday for 2 hours, I just want cushion comfort with a bit of bounce and energy. I think this is going to fit that bill. But I'm looking forward to doing more miles and testing, and we'll bring you the full review once we've done that. But for now, feels solid, feels reliable, good platform to run off, nicely cushioned, decent bit of bounce. Doesn't feel a million miles away from the classic Novablast territory to me.
Okay, so there you have it, some very early thoughts on the new Asics Novablast 5, and it looks to have made a positive first impression on all of us. Now, if you've got any questions about the shoe while we are testing and working towards that full multi-tester review, do let us know in the comments. If there are other shoes you want to know how this compares to, let us know about that as well. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.